So in today's video, I want to discuss 10 things that I actually look for whenever I am purchasing a new lens. So hi everyone, this is Jiggy, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. To be honest, this video was really brought about with me wanting to review this beautiful lens from Sony. This is the new 24-70 GM version 2, the f2.8 version GM2. But I didn't want to do a normal lens review because there are tons of reviews out there already about this lens. So I was like, what better way can I review this lens? And I thought maybe it would be better if I discuss what I look for in a lens and if this particular lens actually has all of these, or all of the factors that I look for whenever I am purchasing a new lens. Now, before anything else, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel and would want to learn more about off-camera flash photography, because this is what this channel is all about, then feel free to subscribe to the channel, and while you're at it, click that notification bell. Now, if you want to see more videos regarding that off-camera flash photography, you can actually check out the other videos in this channel. Now, if you want to see some of my images, you could always find me also on Instagram. It's at Jiggy Alejandrino, okay? So with that out of the way, let's talk about the first thing I always look for whenever I am choosing a new lens. And that is it future-proof? Now, what do I mean about future-proof? When you get into photography for the first time, they might not have the resources, or you might not really want to spend too much, and you decide to get an entry-level camera like an APS-C sensor type of camera instead of going full frame, because there are two kinds, of course, the full frame cameras and the APS-C, or the crop sensors. There are different lenses for both the crop sensor and the full frame cameras. And I would suggest if you decide to invest in new lens, you always future proof. In other words, like for example, again, this 24-70 2.8 GM2 is future proof because it is a full frame lens. In other words, it will work with my camera even if it is a crop body, but it is also going to work with my full frame camera. In other words, it's going to even excel more whenever I am using it with a full frame camera. So that's future proofing, because if you buy a lens that's specifically made for an APS-C sensor, when you go full frame, you will not be able to maximize the full frame of the sensor. So that rule number one for me, it has to be future proof. The second, of course, is I check on my maximum aperture, whether I want it 1.2, 1.4, 1.8, in this case 2.8. Now, that for me, oh, by the way, this is not in any order, because that for me is really something that I look for, but it's not a deal breaker. Because there are some lenses, let's say for example, if I want to shoot with a 600 millimeter and the maximum aperture of that one is a 5.6. But it is for the purpose of that lens. In other words, I need a long telephoto lens and the only lens that's available is a 5.6. Again, it's not going to be a deal breaker. And also, one of the reasons on why I'm okay with a 2.8 here is that I don't want too much bokeh anyway most of the time. You know, I love bokeh, yes, don't get me wrong, I do love bokeh. However, one of the bigger problems is that people tend to fall in love with bokeh and think that their images are beautiful because of the background blur. It's for me personally, it's a proper training for me, not for, let's say, my photographers. Whenever I am teaching them, I tell them not to shoot wide open, because it's very important for them to know all the other aspects or the other elements in the frame that they can include, instead of quote-unquote cheating and just blurring everything out. Though, of course, it has its advantages, and I have nothing against bokeh because I do love it. But again, it's not just all about bokeh. For me, maximum aperture is important because of what I shoot. I shoot events and weddings, and sometimes I have to shoot at night when I need a lot of light to come into my lens. That's why maximum aperture is important, and that's why I like the 2.8 more than the f4. Now, the next thing that you have to consider is whether or not your aperture, in line with that, your aperture is constant or variable, because there's some lenses that have variable aperture. You'll see it in the numbers. They say 3.5 to 5.6. In other words, if it's a zoom lens, when you adjust the zoom, the aperture will also change. I would always suggest go for a lens that has constant aperture. Now, the fourth one is weather sealing. Weather sealing is the ability of the lens to withstand rain. In other words, rain, snow, dust, all those things. The nice thing about that is that it allows you to bring your camera to specific areas that you won't really have to be afraid of what your lens can do. And obviously, this particular lens, the 24 to 70 2.8 GM2, has amazing weather sealing. Oh, by the way, this one also has a constant aperture, which is at 2.8. So it checks out all four so far. Weather sealing, very important too, but not really such a deal breaker if you're just shooting in the studio and you won't be going out in the field. Again, choosing the lens is specific to what you need it for. Now, number five, again, as I said earlier, this is not in any particular order, size and weight. And that's why I love this lens so much, because it is the lightest 24 to 70 2.8 in the market today. Now, why is it important for me? Because I carry my camera the whole day, at least 8 hours. The lighter my lens is, the better it is for my back, for my arms. It's just easier to bring around. So if they can cram in fantastic image quality in a small form factor, I love that so much. And that's why a lot of people actually love prime lenses, because they give good maximum aperture, amazing quality, and at the same time, it's very light. Now, another thing actually that I consider, which you guys might not consider, is minimum focusing distance. The worst thing for me is having a lens and I can't use it indoor because of the minimum focusing distance. You want the minimum focusing distance to just be about a meter or so that you can be that close to your subject and still take the shot. Imagine using those 200 to 600 lenses or those 100 to 400 lenses indoor. You're not going to be able to get anything unless, of course, you're shooting in like a ballroom or something. But another thing, another reason why I love this 24 to 70 is because of its minimum focusing distance. I can actually shoot pseudo macro shots. Of course, it's not a dedicated macro lens, but I can shoot my details using this one. That's why this is really my all-around lens. And now the next one, of course, is the number of blades. This has something to do with bokeh. The number of blades will give you, well, the more blades there are, it will give you a more circular bokeh. I will go back again to number 2, I think, which is my maximum aperture. One upside of having great bokeh is having those blobs of light when lights turn into circles. Now, the more aperture blades you have, the better the circle will be, because you don't want it to be like a teardrop. You want it to be perfect circles because it's more pleasing to the eye. And this 24 to 70 2.8 GM2 has 11 aperture blades, which gives a very, very nice out of focus circles. The next one is image quality. Of course, again, as I said earlier, this is not going to be in order. Image quality obviously is essential. However, in this time and age, there is the gap between good lenses and bad lenses really shortened, that you're getting good quality images from even entry-level lenses. So for me, image quality may be a reason to get a beautiful lens, but it's not my number one reason anymore, because I feel that every lens that is available in the market now will really give good image quality. So what I look for now is more about consistency. So since I am using GM lenses, I want to use all GM lenses already so that the color and image quality is the same. If I use another lens, a third-party lens, the color rendition might be different. So again, it's your personal preference on how you want it to be. So that's why I chose this one. The next one is versatility. Again, versatility, very important. You ask yourself, what are you going to use your lens for? Are you a sports photographer? Are you a portrait photographer? Or are you all of the above? In other words, I would want my very first lens, if you ask me, to choose only one lens with everything that I have, it will always be the 24 to 70 2.8. Why? Because it's got a good focal length, 24 to 70, 24 millimeter, 70 millimeter on a full frame camera, on an APS-C about 35 to 105, I think, give or take. Good maximum aperture, which is at 2.8. Fantastic image quality, fantastic colors. Basically, everything that I need to take, I can take with this particular lens, right? So that's number 9. The last one, of course, is image stabilization. And that's where this one falls short. This one has no image stabilization built in. However, I don't really think of it as a deal breaker because most cameras now have built-in image stabilization. Image stabilization in the early years of photography was very essential because cameras didn't have in-body stabilization. So they depended on the lens to stabilize your image, especially for the long telephoto lenses, which the Sony 7200 2.8 GM2 still has, because the longer the focal length, the more stabilization that you will need. Rule of thumb, whenever you're shooting with a 24 to 70, your minimum shutter speed at 24 should be 1 over 25. It's 1 over your focal length, and then 1 over 70 or 1 over 60. You should be able to get good handheld images without any, of course, if your image is static, of course, but you should be able to get good handheld images by just following that rule of 1 over. But it also helps that the body that I attach this one to has good image stabilization, about 4 or 5 stops anyway. So with that, everything checks. Like 9 out of 10 things that I look for whenever I'm purchasing a new lens is in this particular lens. That's why I love this particular lens so much. But I hope this particular video helps you guys out. Also, just to recap, the first thing that I look for is if the lens is future-proof. Number 2 is maximum aperture. Afterwards is if it's a constant aperture or variable aperture. Then weather sealing, size and weight, minimum focusing distance. Then, of course, you've got the number of blades, image quality, versatility and use, and image stabilization. Okay? So if you guys have any questions with regards to this video, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And I hope you enjoyed this pseudo review of the 24 to 70, but it was really meant as a guideline for you guys who want to purchase new lenses. Now, if you want to see some of my images that I shot with this particular lens, feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's at Jiggy Alejandrino. And don't forget, if you want to learn more about off-camera flash photography, check out the rest of the videos in this channel. Okay? Till the next video.